commission to order. I would ask anyone who would like to address the commission today, when you come to the podium, please speak into the mic clearly so we can hear you. First item on the minutes today is the standard motions. Item 1 is the minutes of the July 17th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion approved. There's my second by Mr. Grimm. Is there any discussion, corrections, or additions? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes approved. Item 1 on our regular agenda today is a rezone petition. It's to consider a rezoning petition from low-density residential to limited commercial. The site is located on lots 1 and 2 of Block 12 of the Prairie Hills 4th Edition subdivision. The site is approximately half an acre. It's listed as 0.44 acres. And I'd ask the party presenting please come forward and let us know what you intend to do.
This backwards, you know, I normally do going
No.
Spin it?
We didn't notice him on
We'll
the
get it turned
Or you
around.
want me to smooth the mic?
If we could beg everyone's
Okay.
indulgence here.
Kind of felt like church a little bit.
I think, yeah. How many city employees does it take to move a podium? There you go, sir.
Thank you. Well, good morning, gentlemen. My name is Matt. I'm the Project and Development Manager with CAM LLC. We've got the 2 lots that obviously we applied for the change of zoning, as well as 9 of the lots, all adjacent to these 2. We applied for the change in zoning. We've had a lot of requests on these lots for commercial use, especially with the change in zoning. I think it was last spring, summer, fall, that they changed the adjacent lots to the west as CC zoning. They've put in the little strip mall. They have the spot for the second strip mall to go in there. In fact, I think Capital City Credit Union has it. I think they're putting a location in there as a bank. We've kind of got 2 lots that are separated from the rest of our owned parcels. With kind of a stub-in street, which eventually I think the way that the plan looks that it's going to head north and make a little loop for some more lots. Being those 2 lots are kind of cut off from where the remainder of ours are, and with the amount of interest we've had in having those lots be a commercial use, we've requested the change in zoning. We originally requested CC zoning, and that was basically just to match what was adjacent. Since then, and speaking with the city and kind of going through, we've seen that LC is a more proper fit for what we intend to do. Our intention is to put in, at this point, we've got somebody in all honesty, contingent on getting this done. They want to put a CPA office in there, as well as like a spa, nail spa, tanning salon type of location. With what we've got in there, I think that's a suitable use, and it kind of adjoins with the neighboring property, as well as starts to buffer down from a larger strip mall to a smaller building to come into our residential lots that we have. The adjacent lots all the way to the east of this, the 6 lots on the north side of 15th Street we own, and are going to be building homes on those lots. And then on that block, I guess on the south side, up against Grasslands Avenue, we own lots 1, 2, and 3 there as well. We've already pulled building permits for 2 of those to build single-family homes as well on those R2 lots. So the hope is that with the recommendation to proceed, that we can get the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval and blessing to start the process to change our zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Donato. Any questions this time or comments?
I have a couple questions.
Mr. Jackson?
I didn't quite hear that. So do you own the lot directly east across the street, across 16th Avenue?
Let me just make sure I'm talking on the right map here.
It would be on the north side of 15th.
Yes, on the map on our application, lots 6 through 11, we own those lots.
Okay. Okay, so my question to you is, you're aware that you'll have to build that street, you'll have to build 16th for that distance between those two lots?
If that's what the requirement is, that is news to us.
Well,
I mean, it's stubbed in there. And as we've got planned for the 3 lots on the south side in Block 10, our permits that we received from the city show access off of 15th.
On the south side, there's probably no choice. On the north side, I think you'll be asked to access from 16th. But either way, wherever the access is, you'll have to take care of that, whatever that is, 125 feet or whatever.
Okay, and it's stubbed in with curb and gutter.
Sure.
And there's a small length of approach. It's being used right now by the lots to the back. They're using that as access right now and driving through, as well as just to the north of, I guess, where the interior larger lot is that strip mall is intended on going. There's a well site, and the trucks have actually been using that approach that's there and driving through the field to get in and out of there.
Well, we'll let staff look at all those
Okay.
details, but
And is that just for access for that one lot? Or do you mean the access for these 2 lots that we're speaking on today?
I'm talking about the access to the 2 lots.
Okay.
We're
Yep.
talking about today.
That's not a
We'll
problem.
probably come off 16th, but
Okay.
again, staff will work through that with you.
Yes, Commissioner Jackson, Steve Josephson, City of Dickinson. And the access issue is one that'll be addressed during the permitting,
Okay.
during the site plan review and permitting process.
Okay,
The main thing I want to make clear is that, those any adjacent properties have to pay for the street that goes by their
Sure.
own property, so that'll be the case
Yep.
for you.
Any other questions or comments?
can I ask one other question?
Yes, Mr. Donovan.
I've gone back and forth with Sarah, I believe Sarah Turner, the Parks Department, as far as a contribution in lieu of land on these, which is one of the notes, I guess, that we'll need to make a cash payment. She's unsure if we have to or not. August 6th was the last email that we'd exchanged, and she had deferred to the city attorney whether we're going to need to do that because of how it's almost a wash what the contribution would be versus what the current zoning is.
Well,
Do you have-
actually, we'll let Mr. Kovac
Yeah.
answer that if he has any information, or Mr.
Okay.
Poling.
I don't. I would have to ask Matt. I have not talked to Sarah about this. For commercial lots, when you're going from a CC to an LC or anything like that, it is fairly much, it's pretty much of a wash is the amount you have to pay. There may be some small contribution there, but it's
Okay.
not.
Yeah, we just hadn't heard. I'd gone back and forth, been about 6 or 7 emails, and the last communication I'd had was August 14th, and on August 6th, she said she had put it into you and haven't heard anything back. So I don't know if it actually got in or if we had any idea. We're
Yeah.
just,
I haven't.
Trying to tie up
heard
ends,
from her,
basically.
But I'll make contact
Sure.
with her today and we'll
Thank
figure
you.
that out.
You can always make a contribution and they can refund you.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make a comment on this rezone petition, please feel free to come forward and give us your views. Anyone else from the commission wish to make comment? Mr. Josephson, at this time I'd ask if you'd have a recommendation for this or any comments you have.
Yes, Steve Josephson, City of Dickinson. Staff does recommend approval subject to, does recommend approval subject to the conditions about the payment, cash payment in lieu of land, and also that the applicant request an amendment to the comprehensive plan, future land use map from residential to commercial. We did have discussions with Mr. Dondino and felt that the LC zoning is more of a transition between commercial and the residential. It allows for uses that are more compatible with residential zoning, office uses, primarily office uses and specialty retail, so you won't have the traffic and other impacts that you would have with the CC zoning. We also recognize that with the proximity, the well limits development, the residential potential on that, on that site. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Josephson. This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jackson.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the combined asset management rezoning petition from R1 to LC, subject to the conditions mentioned and the additional condition that the construction of the 16th Avenue Street adjacent to Lot 1 be part of this approval, as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Tews. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Item 2 on our regular agenda is a rezone petition. To consider a rezoning from a low-density residential to medium-density residential. The site is located in lots 11 through 20 of Block 3 and lots 1 through 16, Block 4 in the Southview Home Second Edition, southwest quarter of Section 10, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. And at this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward.
My name is Mitch Rubin, representing the Highlands, North Dakota. I'm the development manager for the project, and appreciate you taking the time to hear our request. Regarding Southview Homes Second Edition, it's what we refer to now as the Highlands. We've currently begun developing, as some of you may be aware, 2 streets to the west, and the portion of the property we are requesting the increase in zoning for would be all of Block 4, which there's 6 large blocks or lots that are unplatted at this time, or fairly large lots that really aren't usable. We believe that increasing zoning to R2 will allow us to continue single-family home development as well as get some townhomes in there and mix up the development as we move forward. Working with city staff, we thought it'd be better to go forward with the zoning request now prior to the PUD, so that we can prepare and get our plans into play here. And that is what I've got. You guys have any questions for that?
Sure. Mr. Rubin, do you plan on owning these homes or renting them, selling them?
We currently are building and selling. We also we are the general contractor on the project as well. On these specific homes, I don't foresee us renting them. These will be for sale.
So a townhome, would you call it would be close to being a condo?
Condo probably would be what I consider it. I mean, it could be anywhere from a 2 to a 4 to a 6 to an 8-plex, similar to what Roars did over on the west end of town. We don't have any direct plans at this point. We could end up doing all single family for another block. It just, with the way the market's changing, there's more of a demand, we think, for townhomes, and it allows us to sell a more affordable product than the single family home.
Thank you.
And also, the next 2 items on the list will also reflect our property to the north, which we think stepping down from R1 to R2 and then the property to R south is R3 parcel, so we think it makes sense to continue that step down as we go through the property.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Rubin? Thank you, Mr. Rubin.
Thank you.
I might ask if there's anyone in public who would like to make comment on this. rezone petition, please feel free to come forward. Anyone else in the commission wish to make comment?
Mr. Chairperson, I like what they're doing down there. I think these guys are really doing affordable housing down there, and they're actually selling it, so they're making it affordable for people to buy homes in that neighborhood. I know that there's been some people saying that they're building too close, but they're following all the offsets, the street setbacks, and have we had any complaints of that? Steve, we've had none?
Not that I'm aware of.
So I think they're doing a great job, and they're actually making some houses affordable and selling them at a reasonable rate. So I like it. I think we should do it. In the next couple items, as he said, working down the list, just make that area usable. So in my opinion, all three of them, I agree with.
Thank you, Mr. Tews. Any other comments? Mr. Josephson, would you care to comment on this?
The staff recommendation is of approval. Staff finds that the request is compatible with the surrounding properties to the north and to the south. Well, to the surrounding properties, and it's also consistent with the city's comprehensive plan future land use map. Staff recommends approval. And I'm
Thank you,
here to
Mr.
answer any
Josephson.
questions.
This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
I move that the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Southview Homes Second Edition rezoning petition for lots 11 through 20, Block 3, and lots 1 through 16, Block 4, from low-density residential to medium-density residential, as depicted in Exhibit A, as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being of the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Tews. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Rubens. Item 3 on the regular agenda today is a rezone petition. Consider a rezoning petition from low-density residential to medium-density residential and general commercial. The site is located at Lot 10 of the Auditor's Plat Number 9, Northwest Quarter, Section 10, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
My name is Mitch Rubin. I am the development manager for this parcel is referred to as Riverfront Estates, North Dakota. The zoning request we have put in place would be for the commercial portion of the property, which is approximately 4.5 acres. This is located to the north. If you know the Pro Build, when you cross over the river, there's a bridge there. This parcel land is directly to the right, which is fairly unusable as a R1 zone parcel, and the general commercial zoning district runs pretty much all along the river to the north of us. And working with the Parks Department, the area to the south of this, what would be a commercial section, would be a parking lot that we would be donating to the parks, which would then separate it from our R1 plat that we're coming in for on the next item. So we think this is the best use for this piece of land. I think it'd be a great opportunity for, it's open to anything. It could be a phenomenal location for restaurant, offices, brewery. We obviously at this point we're not sure. We don't have anyone locked in, but that is what we consider the best use for that piece of land. And then the increase to R2 would be for the triangular section you're looking at. I believe we call it Lot 16. That is directly north and adjacent to the last item we discussed. So once again, it wouldn't necessarily all be the townhomes like we were discussing, but it would give us the option to do a bigger, better planned development as a whole and intertwine all of it. So those are those two items.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Anyone have any questions or comment at this time?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson?
I agree with Mr. Tuz's remarks about this property, and I'd go further and say, you know, this is really an infill thing for our city that is really good to see this development, and I agree that what we're seeing happen so far is good for our community. I do have one question that pertains to this item as well as the next one, and that is that I think as part of this development, the developer needs to be asked to, what is the street? Is it River Drive?
River Drive, correct.
River Drive? Yeah, we need to bring that up to urban standards as part of your two projects on either side of the street, as we would with any other development.
Right.
You're going to own the property on both sides, and, you know, as part of that development, I think that needs to be brought up to a urban standard.
I think what we were hoping to discuss would be on the next item. We're coming in currently for the plat of just 15 lots. Working with our engineers, you know, our impression of those 15 lots is a significant amount of watershed would go off the back naturally to where it goes now. For the last, you know, you go through the satellite imagery for the last 40, 60 years, the culverts that are in place and the road obviously have been there. I agree with you in terms of the increase in traffic, but the 15 homes that we're coming forward to now, we do not see as a significant increase to the existing road. So our hope would be, because we are putting in significant infrastructure directly to the south within the Highlands development, and we have started our 66-foot right-of-way road on 5th Street Southeast, that would be considered the main thoroughfare. And I think the city, from my previous conversations, would prefer one main access point because that is considered a bypass route or a truck route. That, you know, our hope would be that keeping the width of that existing road, because the infrastructure is in place, the sewer water is already underneath it, and our stormwater plan is going to take in from those existing culverts that we actually try to keep, come in and keep that width for these 15 lots the same, knowing that we're building a 66-foot right-of-way road to the south, which would adhere for that triangular portion, which would increase traffic. If you go down there and you watch the traffic and you consider 15 single-family homes, it seems expanding that road to 40 feet, if it's already existing and in place, seems a little unnecessary, knowing that we're coming in and expanding our road just to the south. So that's what we were hoping to discuss with you, by keeping those natural culverts that are already there and keeping the road at the width it is.
Just a comment from staff is that it's probably something that's more appropriate to can be addressed during the next item, which is the preliminary plat. All the just to state in terms of the preliminary plat that all their civils and other plans and road plans are subject to approval by the city engineer before a final plat can be approved. But this could be an issue that would be more appropriate to discuss during the platting when we get to the preliminary plat, which is the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson.
Yeah,
Any
that's
other
fine.
comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Rubin.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one other
Mr. Jack.
question. I'm wondering about the GC. I think some kind of commercial zoning is fine in that location. Has the Park District looked at that? Really the only, if you want to call it, adjacent properties affected would be the park across the river. I don't know how heavy GC zoning can get us. I didn't look that up, but Park District okay with that? GC as opposed to CC, or?
I think we are. I
Okay.
think it'll be fine. And we've had discussions of this area, and hopefully someday, because you have the park that's across the river, and it would be nice to join the two parks together if we could. I think we're okay with that, unless there would be some reason it wouldn't be good for us. But I can't think of anything.
and certainly staff has been supportive of the GC. Just to highlight a few things that would be different, there's certain types of repair and storage that are allowed in GC that aren't allowed in CC. Most of the uses are either permitted in both, or they might be a special use in CC as opposed to a permitted use in the GC. But there are some similarities, with the exception of some of the storage and repair services.
Any other comments, questions on that? This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this rezone petition. Please feel free to come forward.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Bob Sivak, Dickinson Fire Chief. I'm not opposing the rezone petition, but I'm up here just to make the developer aware that there will be spacing requirements he'll need to meet to industrial well sites located immediately to the east of him. Those are very active sites, crude oil and saltwater well injection site combinations, heavily used industrial sites. And depending on some of the occupancies in the general commercial area, there may be difficulties or challenges for the spacing, 300 feet spacing to tank batteries or well sites. And also, as we move south to the residential, I think that parcel will probably be less of an issue for him. But just so he's aware of that there will definitely be spacing requirements he needs to be aware of. And this would pertain to item number 4 coming up also. Thank you.
Mr. Sivak.
Yep.
I was going to ask him that, and I'm glad he commented that this will carry over to the next item.
Yes.
He agrees to that.
The one comment I had, and I guess this is a question, just for clarification from both either Commissioner Jackson or Attorney Colling, is I understand there was some action that was taken by the City Commission recently about the buffer area between the area between wellheads, that it was changed. I'm just looking for some clarification on that.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the City Commission passed first reading of an ordinance regarding well sites, and amendment to our current ordinance provides that the 300-foot spacing requirement applies both to oil and gas wells and to service wells, such as saltwater injection wells. So there are certain uses or occupancies that would not be permitted within that 300-foot radius around a wellhead or a tank battery.
Thank you, Mr. Colling.
Just one thing in regards to the well. I believe talked to Ed about this, and I believe we're well clear of 300 feet with both parcels. I actually think I'd looked at it closer to trying to increase to 500. And with the stormwater detention, that R1 lot's going to be probably closer to 700 or 800 feet from any wellhead. And the commercial, I can get together with the city staff and go over that, make sure we are well in clearance of that, or if we need to work with it, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Is there anyone else who wishes to make comment on this rezone petition? Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion. Mr. Josephson.
Quick comment. Yes, we've had the discussion. The city staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request contingent upon one condition. We just needed some additional information about the legal descriptions for both of the properties. So prior to this going to City Commission, which I believe would be on the 7th of October, the applicant needs to provide us with the clear legal description. So when the City Commission acts on this, they'll have that. That's the only condition of approval. Staff recommends approval and finds this compatible with the zoning in the area and consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. Staff recommends approval. This time I'd ask for a motion.
I'd move that the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of rezoning from low-density R1 to a general commercial at the north section of the lot, and the low-density residential R1 to medium-density residential R2 at the south corner of the auditor's plat, number 9, lot 10. The rezone petition with the condition as noted by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Tooze. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Thank you again, Mr. Rubin. Item 4 on our regular agenda is a preliminary plat. So consider a preliminary plat for the Riverfront Estates. The site is Lot 10 of the Auditor's Plat, number 9, to the City of Dickinson, the northwest quarter of Section 10, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. It's approximately 36 acres. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
My name is Mitch Rubin. I'm the development manager for the Riverfront Estates. What we are proposing today would be 15 larger lots which overlook the river. They are deeper and they are going to be off of Riverfront Drive. Our hope with these parcels would be to bring in some probably larger homes than what we've been building to the south. And once again, we'd like to continue to step down our development and have these larger parcels go down to our smaller, more typical lots. These 15 lots will range anywhere from, I believe, 10,000 square feet up to a half acre. The goal would be, and this is going back to the conversation on the streets as well, to have a deeper setback than typical. Therefore, you have a longer driveway. You're not going to have a need for people to park on the street. And then we've got the stormwater management detention area, which is tract 1, and fairly large because that will account also for the triangular section and a portion of Block 4 of the Highlands development. Answer any questions you have.
This time, anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, so the road that you're proposing, you're proposing kind of a drainage along the north side of River Drive?
Well, River Drive is already in place. And there's currently on both sides a culvert. What we are proposing in our design that we've submitted to the city is, as you continue east on River Drive, you'll see Tract 1 stormwater management area. So our goal would be stay consistent with what is there for these 15 lots, because the increase in traffic, we do not believe creates a need for expanding the road to 40 foot. However, we would like to create a detention area where we can absorb an increase in water flow from that culvert. So when you see the stormwater plan down there, it's large, and what we would do is bring in water from the culvert that's existing.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jackson?
I guess I'm still not convinced about the street. We have a standard we've been asking everybody else to build. The reason this street is what it is because there's never been any development along it. There's never been anybody to pay for improvement of the street up until now. I believe if there's no curb and gutter on that street, that you're going to have a culvert on every driveway, which, isn't the end of the world, but isn't always the best. If you look at the plat drawing, you can see that the plan to the south is to bring a couple of streets into River Drive. I think the street needs to be improved.
I do too.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I too think that you have a challenge there and that you're aware of it now. And comments in the prior agenda item on safety, I mean, the traffic safety, fire, are all going to be involved in what that street should be and maintenance of it, who's going to maintain it if it's a unique street. Some something would come about that street could be unique. So hopefully you make your intentions fully known of what you could do,
Right.
would like to do, and your actual viewpoint of what that street is now and what it will be if all those homes are developed along there.
Yeah, I think what we're suggesting is for these 15 lots only to consider that, and then when we come forward with the plat for that triangular portion, that we could discuss either maybe cutting off access to River Drive altogether from that portion, and maybe we push it onto Fifth Street Southeast, or that at that point, when we come to, then we can, if increasing the width of the road or adding the curb and gutter is necessary, then we obviously would do that. But for the 15 lots, I think that's just obviously our opinion for the 15 lots. Coming forward, if we need to make a change, obviously we would. With the infrastructure we've put into the south and continuing that, we just, in our opinion, I don't know if we need 2 massive roads for that triangular portion.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Rubin?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Kovash?
On the staff recommendations, number 8, and I'm not sure if it's a typo, but it has that the park plat should be renamed to Track 2 and then show the owner as the city of Dickinson. That needs to be the park district.
Okay. No, I actually haven't even seen those notes.
Okay, well, that's what's on here, and
Okay.
that's what it needs to be changed to, instead
Yep.
of the city as the park district.
And actually, one other item is that park's going to become larger, so it'll probably be closer to 9 acres versus, I think we're at 7.5 right now. So I'll meet with you, James, on that.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Tooze?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with not improving that Riverside Drive if they would restrict the access, but I do agree with Mr. Jackson. If that access stays out to that main thoroughfare, it should be improved. But I don't know what staff feels about cutting off Riverside prior to the development of Fifth all the way.
Mr. Tooze, this is probably something that I will defer to Community Development Director Curtin and City Engineer, Watson about that.
And just to be clear, I may have not explained it clearly. We do not think it's a good idea to just cut off River Drive. I think for access reasons, we want 2 access points, one from the east and the west. What I was suggesting is on the triangular portion, when we go forward, you can see the ghost plat there with the roads tying into it. I was suggesting, and probably didn't do a good job doing so, that on that future plat that we do not tie into River Drive to control that traffic. But I don't know if cutting off River Drive altogether would be, because then there would only be one way into those lots.
That probably won't be acceptable. For clarity,
And I agree.
at this point in time, how wide is River Drive?
Currently, it is, I believe, 22 feet wide.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I'm hearing a suggestion that Fifth Street Southeast would be the main access, and I think that makes some sense. Although I think there are some sight distance problems over on 6th Avenue. I'm not sure if it's at Fifth, but those are the details staff will have to work out with the applicant. I think that makes sense, but I still think River Drive needs improvement. I think it's what we want in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this preliminary plat. Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jackson.
ready for a motion?
I'm going to ask Mr. Josephson this time if he'd like
Sorry.
to make a comment.
Sorry.
Steve Josephson, city planner. Staff is recommending approval subject to the 10 conditions in the staff report, and I would just ask Mr. Rubin if he has had an opportunity to review those. These are fairly standard conditions for preliminary plats. You've been seeing them for the last few months, and I would just ask Mr. Rubin if he's had a chance to review those and if he has any comments on the 10 staff conditions.
I honestly have not had an opportunity. I've talked with Ed on the phone multiple times and gone through what he expects. So at this point, I think we're comfortable with our conversations.
Right, and my discussions with Mr. Corton have been that these were things that you had both discussed.
Okay.
So, and of course, so that's the staff recommendation, understanding that it sounds as if the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to come through with at least one additional recommendation. So, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Any other comments at this time? Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Chairman, I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Riverfront Estates preliminary plat as depicted in Exhibit A as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare with the 10 conditions recommended by staff and the additional condition that River Drive be improved according to detail and design standards provided by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tooth. Any further discussion?
You know, I will throw in, Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of other, I think, fairly critical engineering things that staff needs to look at, and I think they're aware of that, but, you know, that can happen between preliminary and final plat.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And
Just to clarify, and then there was that amended condition by Mr. Kovash. Also,
item 8,
Yes.
change in the
Park
from
District.
city to park district. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Mr. Rubin, thank you very much. Item 5 and item 6 on the agenda that was issued last week, they have been eliminated. They are not going to present today. We'll go to item 7. Preliminary plat. It's to consider a preliminary plat for the Hospital Acres Second Subdivision. The site is generally located in the north half of Section 5, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. The site is approximately 67.3 acres, and at this time I'd ask the party presenting, please.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make a clarification here. The site plan that you were considering for this is the one that's dated July 29th, 2013. There was another site plan on here that was part of the original application, but it's the first one. It's the first one in your packet behind the attachment A. So I just wanted to clarify that that's the one that staff has reviewed. It's dated on the lower left-hand corner, July 29th, 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson.
Good morning. I'm Lee Hantho, the project manager working on behalf of St. Joe's Hospital on the new hospital and medical office building project. With me here today is Mike LaFleur, the board chair, as well as Janice Schaefer from KLJ. In case I get in trouble, they can answer the tough questions on that. The plat, I brought a larger version here, but it's, as was mentioned, it's the first plat, and this reflects all the changes that were requested by the city in meeting with staff earlier and through the middle summer. The major change being a redesign of Empire Road to match up with another intersection down on Fairway. Other than that, and then that entailed a significantly revised change for Willer, what is now Willer Circle, what was Willer Drive before, but now that it's more of a circular road, we've renamed it Willer Circle, which is reflected on the preliminary plat. I think the only change in the final plat that would come forward is that is not reflected here, as we've granted MDU an easement in the northeast corner of the property for their gas connections into the project. And I think that's just a small square of 25 to 30 feet. But other than that, we don't anticipate any other changes in the plat at this time. Got a couple of, just in terms of the document itself, just a couple of changes that we'd suggest. Just in the analysis and recommendation, it says 22nd Avenue, it's actually 23rd Avenue, and that's the new address of the project also, so we just want to make sure that that's corrected in here. And then under stormwater in the analysis, it's actually blocks 1 and 3, not blocks 1 and 2, where the stormwater retention, detention ponds will be on that.
Any questions or comments at this time?
One other item that I'd add is we have worked with the Parks group. We have dedicated property to them for the trail system that would connect and be collaborative with what they've done at the Park and Rec Center now. So that is included in this preliminary plat, the additional land easement that they required for their trail system.
Is the bike trail considered part of their easement or part of an agreement with the park district, or is that something that you're doing separate from them?
It's part of the easement that's reflected in here. An additional 8 feet were added to the traditional easement space for utilities and that to accommodate for the curving 10-foot wide path that they would require. And we met with the board of the Parks District, believe it was back in June, and had that discussion, and then they approved going forward with that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make a comment on this preliminary plat. Please feel free to come forward. Anyone on the commission wish to make comment? Mr. Josephson, would you like to make a comment on this?
Certainly. Steve Josephson, City Planner. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 10 conditions. And again, those are the 10 standard conditions that staff has been bringing forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission on preliminary plats. And it sounds as if the applicant's aware, has reviewed them, and is aware of the conditions. And do you have any further comment? I just ask if the applicant has any further comment on them at this time. And I see a head shake from Janice Schaefer indicating that they have no further comment. So staff recommends approval subject to the 10 conditions. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Josephson at this time? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing and ask for a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Kovash.
move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Hospital Acres Second Subdivision preliminary plat as depicted in Exhibit A, as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health and safety and welfare, along with the 13 conditions.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. This time we have item 9 on our regular agenda. It's a item 8. Item 8, preliminary plat to consider a preliminary plat for the West Villard subdivision. The site is generally located in the southwest quarter of Section 6, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. Site is approximately 6.43 acres, and I ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Hi, my name's Mel Wenko, and I'm here representing Jody Arthod, who's the landowner. Jody currently owns 2 parcels located at 4022 West Villard. The parcels are both located outside of city limits, but within the extraterritorial zone. The first parcel contains 137 acres and includes a house, garage, addition, and yard. And the second parcel contains 151 acres, including agricultural land and 2 shops. Jody would like to sell the house, garage, yard, and 6.43 acres of land. This is noted as Lot 1 in the plat provided. The rest of the land, including the driveway access from Highway 10, the 2 shops, and the agricultural land will not be sold. Since the house is already built, no development or construction is planned by either the seller or the buyer. There are no plans to add any new streets, roadways, or access points to either lot. The driveway that already exists will be used by both lot owners after the sale is complete. The buyers will need to draw up an access easement to use the portion of driveway that will be owned by Jody. Do you have any questions?
Any questions at this time? Any comments? Thank you very much. This time,
My name, Mel Wenko.
this time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this preliminary plat. Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission? I just have one question. This is Mr. Josephson on the, to do this, it's a plat and approve it. Is there any road requirements that aren't there that have to be in place?
Could you please clarify? Any road requirements?
Right, the roads that exist there, none of them have to be changed or upgraded to access any of these this parcel property?
That would be my understanding, and that's a discussion that they need to have with the, because this is in the extraterritorial zone, they need to have that conversation with the road superintendent for the county. I think the main concern that staff had was that the potential that this property could be landlocked in the future. Another buyer could come along and if it's because they're accessing this via a private easement, that there be something in place saying that whoever owns this property is going to always have is always going to be able to use that easement to get onto a road.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. This time I'd ask Mr. Josephson if he has a recommendation.
Certainly. Steve Josephson, city planner. This is a, as Ms. Winko had stated, this is an application for subdivision plat because they wanted to take 6.49 acres off of an existing parcel and sell it. It requires platting of that property. The site plan that they are working off of is the one that is dated September 3rd, 2013, which originally came in with a survey, and then, staff requested that they upgrade that and get a surveyor, which they were able to. So they are working off the one that's dated September 3rd of 2013. Staff recommends approval. As we've discussed, they do need to, in terms of access, they do need to work with the county road superintendent on that, and it's subject to two conditions. Number one is prior to approval, adoption of the final plat, the applicant shall enter into an agreement allowing for access in perpetuity to Lot 1, and then prior to adoption of the final plat, any existing structures that do not meet the minimum setback requirements of the AG zoning district shall either be relocated or removed from Lot 1. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Anyone have any questions at this time? We'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tews?
I move that we approve the request by Mr. Arthod. There is no conditions, as I can see, other than 1 and 2. Steve, any additions?
No, not in this case, with this being in the ET and the ETZ, and the fact that this is an existing development. This is an existing development. They're just creating a residential lot. They're just for the house.
My motion would be then to approve as submitted.
Is there a second? A second. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Michael.
Hello, gentlemen.
Item 9 on our preliminary, it is a preliminary plat. It's to consider a preliminary plat, Dickinson. I guess we had agreed already, I'm not going to read this, but it's for a subdivision. The site is generally located in the west half of Section 5, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. The site is approximately 92 acres. And at this time, I'd ask the party presenting. Please feel free to come forward.
Good morning. Ron Radden, 5 Diamond Development. We're excited to show you this again. We haven't changed anything since the last time we were in front of you. Matter of fact, we've came quite a ways, and we're excited to announce that we have Cashwise 70,000-foot store signed, Joann's Fabrics, Dollar Tree, and Petco. The developer, Jay Moore from Optimum's here. He can come up and explain to you guys or answer any questions that you have. We also, I brought my engineer with me from Great Basin Engineering. I figured Gene would have some questions for him. A month ago, we submitted a preliminary set of civils in to the city, not knowing where the sewer or the water is going to go. And so we've submitted those. We're getting remarks back from them. We've been working with Bill Watson, city engineer, trying to get a grading permit out there, and he told us that we could go ahead and grade at our own risk, subject to, the final drawings come in. It's such a mass grade, and we're trying to get this first phase in, if I can show you this. Right here is where we're going to put the Cashwise. So, subject to the short building envelope that you have out there, we're going to go ahead and start grading this year. And we've got enough room to grade because there's 90 acres out here. The wetlands are down here. So they're going to go ahead and we're going to put a slip between where the wetlands are. We're going to grade up here to get it set so they can start building next year. If you have any questions, I got the engineer and I got Jay Moore here.
Any questions at this time? Comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson?
I do have, let me start off by saying this. I think it's a great project. I don't see any reason we shouldn't be approving it. We should move it forward. It's going to be good for the community. There are I think, some significant detail things that our engineering department needs to work on with the developer, and it perhaps is much further along than I realize. I don't know that it's not, but I think there are 2 or 3 critical things that we really need to make sure that we have taken care of before we approve the final plat. I'm going to mention them just We don't have to talk about them today, but I want to get them on the record, so I'm going to mention them. The first thing is, I really think our engineering department needs to make sure we're talking to DOT about the eastbound off-ramp from the interstate up there, to make sure we don't need some right-of-way from Mr. Radin before the plat is finally approved. Secondly, the open channel through this property is going to carry a lot of water. I expect, who are you thinking is going to be taking care of the maintenance on that open channel through the property?
I would imagine, since it's inside the development, we'll probably have part of the CAM charges. We'll probably have to maintain it. I'm probably going to want to, so it doesn't end up like the rest of the channels in town. We've been working with Grady Wolf at KLJ and Matt with the Corps, and we are leaving it open. We're pushing it up against the road. They've already given us the delineations on it, and we're working with Casey on the floodplain here from, what is it? Highland Group. And so we've been in here with them. We had a meeting yesterday with everybody in here.
Sure, and you know, I don't see it as any kind of a show-stopping problem here. It's just that we need to make sure that we're satisfied as to the design, but then also the maintenance on that open channel facility. The last question I have for you is, have you guys been working with the city's 2 consultants on water and sewer? Because I know we'll need easement along the business loop for sewer trunk line and water trunk line.
Yeah, what we did is we entered into an agreement with the city to go ahead and pay for that, to have the KLJ, and then there's another group that's working at the sewer, I think, as well, or the water. And we can't communicate with them. The way it goes is we give it to your staff sends it over to them, then they send it back. But we are working with them, and we do understand. And I think they're putting the water and the sewer in the city's easement out front.
And that could be. I don't know.
Because they've got
final-
such a large easement, and that's where they wanted it.
Sure. And if that's the case, my specific concern was the easements, and if they are in the highway right away, then
Yeah,
it's
they
not a
are.
concern. So, the last thing I want to bring up is I see the staff has a comment about the north access point, waiting for, I think it's waiting for a decision of DOT or feedback from DOT or something. And the only thing I would say is that if we think that's good for the community, and I do think it's good, I think we should have that access point, then I think the city should go to the DOT and join in the request from the developer. I think we should be proactive about that. If staff agrees that that's good for our community to have that access point, I personally do. I think.
And Gene, would you be real clear on where that point is going to be? Where
Well,
do you think
it's
it
on
would
the
be?
business loop, and Mr. Redden, where is it?
It's
West
the north
Beach?
entryway on the business loop. And we do have, we've got
Looks like it's between lots
city
2 and 3.
engineers.
Or,
Your staff all agrees that it should be a right in and a right out. We have done a traffic study. It shows that it is needed. When this development's done, we'll be bringing close to 2,000 cars in and out of here a day.
and my point is that I don't think we should leave it to the developer to be trying to coordinate that with DOT alone. I think if we think it's good, we should join the developer in that request.
I think that's an excellent request, because I know several years ago when we were dealing with the DOT on Fairway and Empire and what should or shouldn't be left, the DOT has a lot of say in this, and it would be wise to join with the city in that request.
We've asked Fire for a letter, asked Edgerton for a letter. We've asked Bill Watson. Everybody said they'd give us one. And go talk to Larry.
Those are my only comments, and again, I know these are things that the developer will probably work out with our staff, but I think it's important we get them on the record.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this time? This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to make comment on this preliminary plat. Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Clive.
I would comment, as far as the parks go, they haven't been in front of the board. However, James informed me yesterday that they are on our next meeting schedule. There have been talks about this, so it doesn't appear there'll be any problems figuring out what we want to do there.
Thank you, Mr. Kalash. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Josephson, would you like to make comment?
Sure. Steve Josephson, City Planner. I'd just like to ask Mr. Radden to come up again. Just a couple of things. Staff does recommend approval subject to of the preliminary plat, subject to the conditions that
21
you see in
conditions.
front of you, and the 21 conditions, including a change to another unique name. But there were just a couple of things I wanted to ask Mr. Radden about. Well, first of all, awareness of the fact that the standard, the wellhead standard, has changed, and how that's going to impact.
We're working with
your plat.
We're working with Bill right now on it. Since it's just a water ejection well, there's no trucks coming in, there's no injection going down from trucks that's toxic. It's clean water that they inject into the ground to push the oil up around all the other fuel line, or what I want to call them, the other wellheads. It's not as big a danger as the ones that are there with the batteries and the trucks that are coming up and putting, they call them saltwater disposal sites, where they're just dumping the stuff that comes out of the fracking. So we are working with Bill. We got to prove to him that that is what it is, and he'll give us a letter and we'll work around that, because that does affect the plat dramatically.
Okay. And then the status of, you're currently showing a cul-de-sac on the preliminary plat, and I understand there have been some discussions with city engineering regarding that.
Yeah, they asked us to take, you're talking about the roundabout?
The roundabout, I'm sorry, I correct myself, thank you, the roundabout.
The engineering
the
staff
rotary.
asked us to take that off. We'd like to have seen it to slow the traffic in there, but we're working with him on that.
Okay, and the site plan you have here today
Yeah, the site plan has taken it off.
reflects that, okay. And then, as we mentioned, and Commissioner Jackson commented on before with the access from the DOT, you've had the conversations with DOT, and it sounds as if you're going to get letters of support from city
Yes,
staff.
and I really liked Gene's opinion on that, because without the city, I don't think we'd get it, and without it, we're not going to be able to get the, we've already got an LOI out right now on the theaters. Cash-wise needs it, to have people come in and out. It's 1,200 feet away from the intersection. It's plenty far enough away. The traffic reports state that it's needed. So we want to go back to UDOT with the traffic report, with the city behind us, to go ahead and get that.
Okay.
The project's really coming along well with the theater and what we've got going on already. I think it'll be very exciting for the city.
Okay. And as stated, staff recommends approval subject to the 21 conditions that are included in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Any other comments? This time we'll close the public. Oh, Mr. Sivak, would you like to make comment?
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Just a point of clarification, a water injection well generally is a saltwater injection point. We have visited with the developer about this site, and this is a different site. We've asked for documentation from the developer. I know they're working on that. I don't believe there's any above-ground activity, which makes this a different site. There's not trucks pulling in. There's not above-ground storage tanks. This particular injection point, we believe, is fed strictly by pipeline, which would give us something different to look at. So we are looking at that and working with them on that. We are in favor also of the north access point. Emergency response from the new Public Safety Center, which would be the primary response to this development, will be coming from the north. And it only makes good sense to be able to access the development as soon as we can in that direction coming from the north. And then just another point of information for the developer, I realize this is just preliminary plat, and things can change quite a bit between now and final plat. But there are a couple of issues with fire department access concerning how they have the hotels depicted on the preliminary plat. So I would hope that they will visit with us concerning that as this continues to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Colling.
just one comment on the wellhead spacing. As we mentioned, the current ordinance or amendment to the ordinance both require a 300-foot spacing around the wellhead. There is procedure for requesting a waiver of that. We have done that in particular instances in the past. So if the circumstances of this particular injection well would mitigate in favor of a waiver, we can talk with the developer and get that done.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. Any other comments? If being none, I would ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tooze.
I'd move that we approve the plot and request, or the preliminary plot for Dickinson Town Center subdivision with the 21 recommendations offered by staff.
I'll second that.
Second. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Is the name?
I see it's Dickinson Hills Shopping Center. Thank you. Item 10 on our agenda is a special use permit request. It's to consider a special use permit for a kennel. The site is located at 1181 Main Street South on Block 2 of Lot 8 of Frank's second subdivision. The site is zoned general commercial and is approximately 1/4 of an acre. At this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward applying for the special use permit.
Good morning. My name is Jared Toogood with GT Architecture. I'm here representing myself. As you see coming around, there's some response to a few issues that had came up. Other than that, I guess I have nothing further to present other than what was presented to you. Any questions?
This information sheet you just provided us,
Yep.
it says you will be living in the house to the north with my fiance, Sarah. Now, where do you live at now?
In Dickinson.
Okay, but you don't occupy that house currently?
Which house?
That you just listed, that you'll be living in the house to the north?
No. Nope. I plan to buy the property. It'd be actually all 3 lots there right in a row.
Okay. So that is not a given that you will be living there?
No, I will.
Like
I
the-
will if I mean, if this gets approved and I purchase the property, I will be living in that house.
Okay. So at this time, you don't own the property?
No.
Okay.
And that's a condition of the purchase agreement is approval of the kennel. So.
Okay. In your original application, you were going to just operate 12 hours a day?
Yep.
There's no future conditions for operating in the night or overnighting dogs?
Well, there would be dogs overnight, but we wouldn't be operational. It'd be at night. The dogs would be inside and could not be outside. So I mean, it'd be overnight boarding, but there would be hours of operation that someone would be there. The business would be open. Would be the 12 hours during the day.
But according to state regulations, someone has to be in care of those animals at some point in time, 24 hours a day, at some right for their well-being?
No one needs to be in the
No.
building, I guess.
So what time frame if you purchased the property and if you got the go-ahead and you had all the other issued permits that are necessary, when would you start operation?
I guess as soon as we could get construction of the project finished.
Mr. Tooth?
Jared, kind of walk us through, you're buying all 3 lots, the house, which is definitely some acreage, and everything on that.
It'd be the
Adjacent to Highway 22?
Yes, it'd be the lot to the south where the building's on, then the lot north of that which the house is on, and the lot north of that which is an empty lot currently.
And you have a purchase agreement on all 3?
All 3 as one property.
Okay.
Yep. And they'd all 3 be zoned commercially.
Just a point of clarification, all 3 are they're all currently zoned commercial.
And this is an application strictly for a special use permit in that zone district, so that's what we're looking at. You have enough parking on a 1/4 acre for this special use permit for employees?
Yep.
And patrons?
Yep.
Okay. There's been a question and concern about the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you address the noise issue? Have you talked to people 3 or 4 blocks away? I mean, how many times do you have to have a complaint of a barking dog before you think it's a problem?
Well, like I had mentioned in there, as far as if there's someone will be there all day, and if there is an issue, the dog would be basically taken inside, and so I mean it wouldn't be a repetitive issue. And she's talked with quite a few kennels in Fargo that are within the city, and they said basically if you do the proper soundproofing and bring them inside if you have an issue, they don't really have much for complaints. So.
Do you have a timeline? How long would you keep any one animal there? Weeks? If someone wanted to leave an animal there for a month or whatever to go on vacation, would you? Is that the type of facility you're looking at?
It'd be more of the. I mean, there'd be a potential of someone having a dog there for a extended period, but it'd be more geared towards the we're gone for a weekend boarding or like the daytime doggy daycare. So,
Sure.
Be more geared towards the short term.
And what other animals would your permit allow you to have?
Cats, I guess, but that's a very, very rarity. So, and there are some internal rooms where we'd be able to put those, but it'd be primarily dogs. So.
And the dogs themselves, would they have soundproofing from each other, or is it the kennel itself, the whole?
The
building
kennel as a whole would be, and then there would also be internal rooms if you had an issue with a dog that they could be taken to, so they wouldn't be barking, causing other dogs to. So there'd be internal rooms that would be completely separated off as well.
And how does the city or the state deal with waste from animals in these?
As far as the solid waste, I talked with the Stark County Health. And they said basically double bag it and dispose of it into the trash. And as far as the liquid would be into the septic.
Okay.
Or into the cities. I mean, basically whatever you have, but that's kind of.
So there's no issue with liquid runoff on the property?
No.
Could you tell me how the guidelines are set up and how anyone would enforce an issue with an odor problem?
I guess that's typically, I mean, the cities will have their recommendations on how they do that, and I'm not sure that the city of Dickinson does as far as what I've found. I guess I could work with you to kind of get some stuff in place to move forward with that. But.
Well, let me ask Mr. Kohling if he's aware of any ordinance dealing with kennels and all the issues with kennels in the city.
Mr. Chairman, not specifically with kennels. We do have a nuisance ordinance that could apply in the event that an excessive odor was transmitted onto adjoining properties, and there's an enforcement procedure for that. But to the best of my knowledge, there's not something specifically regulating kennels within our city ordinances.
Because I think that's the biggest issue from the comments I've heard is that, you know, people are concerned about the noise, and the odor and the waste. What's going to be done with them, that if those issues come up, that they can be handled. So the city has to have an ordinance in place that they can be dealt with in an appropriate fashion. Any other comments at this time? Questions?
I have a couple
Mr.
of
Josephson?
questions for Mr. Toogood, if I may. Can you describe the kinds of construction standards that are used for kennels to address issues like, well, for example, like soundproofing? You know, I understand the dogs being outside, you know, they're not going to be outside all day. I think the big concern is going to be in the evening at night. You know, you get a dog you get dogs, one barks, the rest of them bark or whatever. So in the research that you've done, are there other standards for construction that would need to be followed that would assure soundproofing? How would that be done as part of the construction process?
Basically, the sound insulation within the walls, and then on top of that, a soundboard on top of the walls before you basically. So it'd basically be the sound insulation within the walls, and then also a soundboard on top of that.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how would this be something that would be over and above? Well, let's back up a second. You're going to use an existing commercial building that's there, and you're going to retrofit that, or is that correct?
Yep. The inside, basically, the whole perimeter of the building from the inside would be furred out with like a stud, and then there'd be the sound insulation and the soundboard on top of the because it's already spray foam insulated, so it'd basically have the building insulation and then a double layer of sound insulation.
Okay, I guess that's the thing I'm interested in is, what are the construction standards for this, that they're going to be over and above what you would typically have for a commercial building?
Yeah.
That would soundproof. That would soundproof it, because that would be, my concern is having dogs barking at night from inside the building. So, you know, so what's going to be done in terms of the construction standards that would make that different from your typical commercial building?
Yep. So yeah, basically, I mean, it'd be the typical commercial building would just be the building and the insulation, like let's say the spray foam insulation that's there. So you'd have basically 2 more layers of sound barrier from a typical building. Is that?
Yeah. From your fiance's experience and her research, how have other kennels in urbanized area dealt with what Commissioner Abrahamson was talking about in terms of odors, in terms of controlling them?
Basically, the ones she had visited with were in Fargo, and they said where it becomes an issue is the kennels that are either not staffed during the day. So let's say it's all day and they come in at 5 o'clock and then they'll clean up. Well, the odor's been sitting there the entire day from multiple animals. If you're staffed and you basically, as it happens, it's cleaned up, taken care of, it doesn't become an issue. So.
The issue of having somebody there overnight with the dogs, is that something that you would be, you know, I mean, it's not called out in the conditions. Would that be something that you might be amenable to? If the Planning and Zoning Commission were say that there had to be staff on site in the building 24 hours a day, would that be something that you might be amenable to?
Yep. And another thing, I guess I don't think I mentioned anywhere, is that we would for surely have cameras in there that would be viewable. So basically, there'd be surveillance of a sort, regardless if someone was in the building or not. Which I know isn't a requirement of the state anyways, but I mean, basically, that was our idea. So.
Okay, are you planning to do anything like training or
No,
training, adoption, anything like that?
No.
Adoption services, anything of that sort?
no, none of that'd be more of the rescue, animal rescue, and we don't plan to do that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You plan to do any sales?
Minimal, I mean, just probably a few treats or things like that when people drop their dog off or pick them up, but very, very minimal.
Would that require a separate license? Do you know?
I believe so.
Are you aware of what type of what type of water and septic you're on right now? Are you hooked into the city?
It's a septic system, and that'd be part of the whole process. I would definitely get a civil engineer and have everything, if need be, redone or sized accordingly. So.
Any other questions or comments at this time for Mr. Tuga?
Maybe one.
Mr. Jackson?
You're going to be living adjacent to this building.
Correct.
If, say, a year from now, you decide to move to the north end of town, what would you do with the kennel?
I don't plan to move, so, I mean, I don't.
Things change.
Yeah.
Would you try to operate it from the north end of town?
I mean, you could make it a condition that if I move, it has to be closed down. That would be fine, because we don't, I mean, we have no reason to, I guess, leave from the property.
Okay.
That'd be kind of the purpose of how she wanted to run it, was so that she could be in close proximity. So, I mean, we'd be perfectly fine if you wanted to have that as a condition
Thank you.
if we didn't live there, so.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Tuga.
I'm Shirley Ducard. I'm representing the seller, who's my brother. They cannot split the property. The new ruling now is you have to have 40,000 square feet for a septic. These lots are 10,800 square feet, all three of them. So he could not move and leave one thing and, you know, sell the house separate. They have to be sold as a package, and that's the problem we're having, because you can only live in the house, and he's aware of that. I've disclosed everything. If the house burns down, he can't build a house back up. He would have to build a commercial building. So once it's zoned commercial, you can't change it. You cannot go back to residential, and this has been general commercial. And the house was built probably in '76, I think, by my brother-in-law. So I've had family living in this property all along. And he does have a new drain field and lift station that was just put in last year. So, and there's Southwest Water, and he has 2 wells. One works, one doesn't.
On insurability, we were talking about this 2 months ago about people buying property that was zoned commercial and had been grandfathered in because there was a resident there. Have you had any problem with the insurance company saying we're not going to insure this?
I guess they haven't stated that. So.
Okay. And as far as the septic, it was nice to hear this information. Is there a separate requirement? I know they base requirements, the health department base requirements on the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and residents in a resident. So as far as what size septic system is required, is there a requirement in those lines for a kennel?
I don't believe so. I mean, just that it'd have to be sized appropriately, but.
And you stated earlier that solid waste was okayed and double bagged.
That's how they recommended doing
Right,
it.
and the runoff was okay that it
Septic.
would go, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Tugad. At this time, I'll enter into the record. There's received 2 letters. One was received by the engineering department in opposition to the kennel from Eugene and Mary Olheiser, and also from a Matthew Hines. And we'll let, those will go on the record as people opposing the kennel. And if they are here, they would be allowed to make their comments public also. So at this time, I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this special use permit, please feel free to come forward.
My name is Karen Lang, and probably a lot of these points are going to be redundant since the discussion, but I prepared the letter, so I would like to present it. We were notified as property owners within 300 feet of the proposed kennel. We're not opposed to another kennel in Dickinson, but we are opposed to this location. We are dog owners, and we recognize the need for boarding facilities for animals in this town. We're also aware of the noise from barking dogs and the smells from their kennels. At any given time, you can be out in the yard and you can hear the dogs barking in Heartland Village and around in the surrounding area. And this is not up to 18 dogs in a confined area. We're concerned with the location. I feel it's too close to neighbors. The barking from the excited or nervous dogs will cause noise issues to those of us who live in the area. And the odors from the waste will drift to the homes to the north, the east, and the south of the proposed kennel. Highway 22 is a busy highway, and there's a lot of noise. I think the noise will be disruptive and cause the dogs to bark. They're already away from their homes, and the most peaceful, quiet surrounding would be the best for the animals. The hours are shown as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. that the animals could be outside, and then 7 p.m. they would have to be indoors. I'm not sure what the smells would become like inside, when they're in throughout the night. I know we have to let our dogs out after 7 p.m. or they don't make it through to the morning. Also, the proposed plan, the architect's rendering of the proposed kennel is not feasible. The rendered image shows a fence and shrub on the south side and the east side of the building. There's no room for this since the building is already too close to the property line to the south. An image can be created using drafting software, but if it doesn't fit on that designated property, it's not good. We built an additional garage on our property in 2007, and we were required to have a survey completed at that time. That survey shows that the subject building is on or within 1 foot of the property line to the south. When we built our building, we had to set it back 20 feet from the property line. According to the drawing submitted, it would appear that the parking lot is on top of the drain field, but I don't have the exact specifications, and I'm unsure if you could build a parking lot on a drain field. The permit also proposes to use the existing septic system, and I guess I questioned if the septic system that is currently there is connected to the drain field that is used in conjunction with the house, and if it's adequate for the animal waste, but that's already been addressed in some manner. I guess our other concern is that the shop has always been used for vehicles. The fluids from changing oil, changing motors, that type of thing. How do you get that out of the concrete? Can you ever get it out of the concrete? And if not, is it safe for animals? I'm including pictures of the homes in this area, and I'd also encourage you to look at the pictures on the assessor's webpage. The pictures submitted with the permit application don't do justice to the residences in the area. There's no front views of any of the homes included. And then I just was going to quote the September 10th article in the Our Town section of the Dickinson Press regarding boomers boarding. And their quote was that it is far enough away from town that it has no immediate neighbors to complain about the sound of several excited dogs welcoming her or her employees, but it is close enough so dropping off the dog can be the last stop before heading out of town. That kennel opened August 1st, according to the article, and it is located at 1409 10th Avenue Southeast, which is a mile east of the Loaf and Jug and a half miles south. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts, and I hope you'll take into consideration both the thoughts I've expressed and the letters from concerned neighbors when you make your decision.
Thank you.
And I would just like to pass the pictures. The letter is redundant, I just read it, but I took some pictures of the homes in the area that you could take a look at, since you probably don't have the internet available right now before you make your decision. That's all I have.
Mrs. Lang, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you one question. You've heard the description of the facility and all, and
I have.
do you think there's anything that could be added to the layout, to the construction, or anything else that might make this more palatable?
I'm not sure that you, in my opinion, I'm not sure that you could fully soundproof the building. And no matter when you have dogs outside, you are going to have barking. I have 2 dogs. One of my dogs is quiet as ever. The other one is a barker. You get someone out by the fence and she barks until she knows whether someone belongs there or what's going on. And if she had 17 of her friends outside, even if they're out for 10 minutes, all 18 of them barking, it's going to happen. I sit there, I listen to, I name Heartland Village because they're within such close proximity. But, any time of the day, you can be outside, you can hear dogs barking around. And I understand as a dog owner, dogs do bark. But I guess I look at some of the conditions that were put in the plan, and it says that it should not cause any adverse noise or odor impacts. What is a noise impact and who measures that noise impact? If a dog is barking and barking and barking, whether it's one dog or a different dog and they take turns, at what point does that become a nuisance? And we're served by the sheriff's department, not the local police department, because we are out of town. So by the time I make a call and the sheriff gets there, if the dogs have quieted down, who do they believe? How many times do you call in before they chalk you up as a nuisance caller? Odors, who measures the odors? I can tolerate a lot more odor than my daughter who has severe allergies. Who determines whether the odors are offensive or at what point they're excessive that they would cause for some type of enforcement, I guess. In my mind, I think it is too close to everything. I'm aware that a kennel was recently opened in Taylor, and it's my understanding that they had to locate 1/4 mile away from everything so as not to cause disturbances in the surrounding areas. When you're putting dogs in outside runs, there's no way to soundproof it. There's no way to, you can build a nice fence or whatever you want, but there's no way to soundproof it. Those dogs are outside. They need the fresh air. They need the exercise. So I guess in my mind, I don't think there is anything that could be done to make it a good location and operation. But as I said, that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This time I'm going to ask if there's anyone else who would like to make comment. Please feel free to come forward.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Keith Miller. I own Miller Machine and Welding. We're about 200 feet to the south of this proposed dog kennel. My parents, however, live about 80 feet to the south, and they are 80 and 75. And I don't really think they need to listen to the dogs all day long, whether it be 1 or 2 coming and going, but I don't think it's a good fit for the area.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Somebody asked, is there anyone else who would like to make comment? Please feel free to come forward. Any comments from the commission? I have a few further comments. I have dogs, and I know I don't like barking. And a barking dog, even for 10 minutes, is a nuisance. I've been subjected to scrutiny by the dog police myself. They came over, and it wasn't even my dog, but I appreciated their concern. So I find it difficult to have a kennel that could be, silent enough for all the neighbors. Some of the other facts, so I dismiss the kennel I use. There isn't anybody there at night. They come during the day. They're not there all day long. They come at just certain hours during the day, and the dogs do fine. And they're also in a commercial area, but they're not the nearest residential property is a good 3 blocks, 900 feet away from them. So I think the close proximity to this to other residences is very difficult. Even though the party is going to want to live right there, some people's tolerance for barking dogs is extreme. It doesn't bother them. It's like playing kids, you know. They could care less. They don't hear it. It doesn't bother them. But the people who are there who think they're going to be aggravated by it are already aggravated by barking dogs and other possible odors. I think is a major concern that we have to think about. Any other comments? Mr. Jackson?
When I looked at this, I was also concerned about the adjacent homes, and if you drive down there, and I think we all know the area, it is very mixed use. There are a lot of commercial operations, but there are homes that are very close. To me, we have to decide, will this truly cause an issue? And if it does, I don't think we should do it. I don't think we should insert a problem into a neighborhood, even as mixed use as it is. So I have to ask myself, will it cause that kind of obtrusion for neighbors? Mrs. Lang admits there are other dogs that you're going to hear, and I think we probably all have that in our own neighborhoods. I have a dog too, and I don't like it. When my dog barks or I pull her inside, I think I have to come down on the side of this being too much of a risk in this neighborhood.
I agree. I think the risk is there, and even if we had in place the ordinances to deal with it, we can't deal with residential barking now in a very good manner. It's tough. So to take this step further and then try to go back, I think would be very difficult. Any other comments? Questions? Mr. Josephson?
Yes, Steve Josephson, city planner. Still, staff still stands with its recommendation. We believe that through the conditions that are proposed, that it can mitigate the impacts of kennel. Looked at some conditions that were crafted in other communities, and if it's built to the standards where it can be soundproofed, it could be effective, yet also understand the concerns of the planning and and zoning commission. It is a mixed area through there. This is zoned commercial, and certainly this is, there is a need for this sort of use. With this being a special use, if they're not able to follow the conditions, the city can always go ahead and revoke the special use permit, which is an incentive for an applicant to deal with those issues. If it's important to have somebody there 24 hours a day, we can propose a condition to have staff on site 24 hours a day. If the hours of operation or the dogs being outside, if that's too lengthy a period, we can always change that from say 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock, something along those lines. It's that's at the discretion of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but staff still does stand by its recommendation of approval, subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Tooze.
I agree with Mr. Josephson. With these conditions, I think the special use permit, in what could be done with that building could come into conformed use, or a use that would work. The way I'd look at this is maybe the lesser of two evils of what could possibly go into that area in a commercial use zone with residents around it. If Mr. Toogood wouldn't be buying the surrounding property, I would have further concerns. But I think that this could work and be a workable environment for the residents and under these terms of the special use. I wouldn't agree to put somebody there 24 hours a day. I mean, I think that's extending it a little too far. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Tews. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from Gene and from Earl, it sounds like the nuisance, would that nuisance be more acceptable? Because it sounds like what Steve says is this is not a bell that can be unrung, or there's an opportunity to revoke this special use. It's not as if the business were in operation becomes a nuisance, and then, you know, it's a road that we've gone down that we can't come back on. It looks like a suitable business for the location. Does that make the noise concern more palatable, that it could be a revocable?
Well, I think it's palatable in that respect if there's an ordinance in place that is enforced that would, you know, see to it that, and you'd have to be very specific. I mean, how long are you going to let a dog bark before it's an official nuisance? And then how many times is that going to happen before the special use permit is revoked? And what lines of appeal then does the business owner have in that revocation? You're tying, once you go down that road, you better be sure you can turn around.
Let me ask the city attorney, Mr. Colling, given that this is a, we've had discussion about you know, nuisance within the extraterritorial zone, but given that this is the conditional use or special use is a zoning issue, would complaints like that be subject to code enforcement? And then the other issue would be the revocation of the special use permit. What process or procedure, what the city would be able to do, you know, should something like that happen. The other thing that we also have in condition here too is that if there's a change in ownership, if Mr. Too Good and his fiance would sell this in the future, then the special use permit does expire and subsequent owners would have to come back, you know, would have to come back for that. That, I just wanted to point that out also. But Mr. Colling, if you could, is it possible for you to address those issues about, would this fall under code enforcement because it's a special use permit, and number two, the revocation process?
Mr. President, Commissioners, to address those points, this would be a special use permit granted under the zoning code, so it would fall under zoning code enforcement. We do have code enforcement officers that can go out and write up reports regarding those code issues. Because this is a special use permit, both our city ordinances and state law allow you to attach whatever conditions you deem appropriate to those special use permits. The procedure for revoking a special use permit for violation of conditions is essentially administrative. Administrative staff can revoke those special use permits if there's a violation of the conditions. The holder of the permit would then have an appeal procedure. They could appeal that to the city commission and have essentially a public hearing regarding whether or not that revocation of the permit was appropriate or not. So there is some procedure that we could follow, and that may influence your decision as to whether or not you want to grant the special use permit.
Mr. Colling, would it probably, just for the sake of clarification, would it be helpful to attach a condition stating that any failure to comply with any or with the conditions of the special use permit would lead to and other provisions of city ordinance would lead to revocation of the special use permit? Would it be helpful to have that in there as a condition?
I would have no objection to that as a condition. That is generally a condition of our special use permits in any case, whether or not it's specifically stated or not. If the conditions are not fulfilled, the permit can be revoked. So that's a potential mitigating measure, may mitigate in favor of the special use permit. We do have a number of code enforcement issues within the city, and our code enforcement officers are of course very busy. I do have some question as to whether or not noise issues regarding barking dogs or that sort of thing can be effectively enforced by a code enforcement officer, simply because by the time the code enforcement officer gets out there, it may be a day or two later, and the dog that was barking yesterday may not be barking today. So you're going to have that issue, and I think from an enforcement perspective, it may be a difficult one for our staff to really enforce in an effective way.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. That, to me, is the question, is it enforceable? And I don't believe it is. I think it's the same issue as people who express themselves through barking dogs or want to express themselves for their exhaust pipes of loud motor vehicles. That is unenforceable. The noise level is getting worse in the city, and I don't think we should add to it. And we shouldn't go down the road of allowing it unless we can see a way back. And at this time, I don't believe we can. If we go down that road, we can't turn around. It's unenforceable, I believe, at this point in time. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Kulak.
I think it's unfortunate. I think something like this is needed, but, and one thing nobody's talked about is I question what it does to, obviously some people may like it, but I question what it does to the value of the property around it, the other homes that are there, if they ever want to sell their house. Is that going to be a negative effect, having a kennel nearby? I know if it was me living out there, I probably wouldn't be happy about it.
Thank you, Mr. Kulak. Any other comments? This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson.
I move the Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend denial of the Too Good special use permit as not meeting the requirements of Dickinson Municipal Code and being contrary to the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second? Mr. Kovac, second. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Record 3-2. Motion recommended denial. Thank you, Mr. Toogood. This time we have a final plat, item 11. To consider a final plat for the Send First subdivision. The site is generally located in the southeast quarter of Section 7, Township 139 North, Range 96 West. It's approximately 6.72 acres. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Andrew Schrank with Highlands Engineering and Surveying, representing the owner of Send First subdivision. This plat consists of approximately 6.72 acres out near Patterson Lake, just west of the golf course. The subdivision is bordered by 3 roads. It's bordered by Patterson Lake Drive to the west, 30th Avenue Southwest to the east, which is the road we will be using for access to these lots, and also A Street Southwest along the south side. This site will consist of 5 residential lots, single-family residential lots, and these will be approximately 1-acre lots. We did hear that there were some concerns about the soils in this area and whether or not drain fields would be able to be used out here. So we did have a soil specialist do several borings out at this site and analyze the soils, and we found that there were no problems with that, and drain fields will be able to work out here. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to address those at this time.
Mr. Schrank, on drain fields, are they specific to a specific lot and the actual site on that lot?
No, each lot would have their own drain field.
But on each lot, do you have to perk each lot in a specific area, and that drain field is then designated to be specifically on that spot on that lot?
Typically, the 40,000 square feet is a requirement from the local health department for a lot size. And on that lot, you typically have your drain field location, and there's also a place for reserve location in case your first location fails. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but we didn't actually designate an area on this lot. We did several borings throughout the entire site, and none of those borings showed any locations that would be inadequate for a drain field.
Are they going to be hooked up to Southwest Water?
That's the plan, as long as the owner has talked to Southwest Water about getting water out here, and there is no guarantees, of course, until they need the hookups for that water, but it sounds positive that they will be able to get Southwest Water in this area.
Well, on your access into this site, do you have to have any agreements with any of the federal agencies that are near Patterson?
No, I don't believe so. 30th Avenue Southwest, I believe, is a county road. And it is in our development agreement that all access points off of 30th will be approved by the road superintendent, the county road superintendent. We won't be accessing off of Patterson Lake Drive or any of those federal areas.
Okay. And have you talked with the road superintendent? Do they think that that road has to be improved going in there?
We did not told that any roads would need to be improved. He was acceptable with the way the roads were now, so.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Schrank? Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this final plat, please feel free to come forward. Any further comments from the commission? Mr. Josephson, would you like to make comments?
Yes, Steve Josephson, city planner. The staff recommendation for this final plat is approval, subject to the condition that the development agreement be signed by the developer, and the conditions of approval shall be met to the satisfaction of the city of Dickinson. And I believe Mr. Schrank has reviewed the staff report and condition and has not expressed any issues with that. So recommendation of approval subject to condition.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final plot for the Sin First subdivision with the one recommendation from city staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Grimm. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Schrank. Final plat is the last item on our agenda today. It's to consider a final plat for the Oxy First subdivision. The site is generally located in Section 16, Township 140 North, Range 96 West. It's approximately 21 acres. At this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward. Mr. Josephson, are you aware that if anyone was going to present here, or is it needed?
Steve Josephson, city planner. I don't believe in the case of this, with this being a final plat, that anybody needs to be present for this. In my discussions with Community Development Director Courton, this building's already been built. They had their preliminary plat. This is just finalizing it and formalizing it, and there were no conditions approved with the preliminary plat, and no conditions are proposed for this one. This is just finalizing. This is just making this final and recognizing an existing building. So, in a case like this, the applicant doesn't need to be present.
Thank you. This time I'd ask if anyone in the public would like to make comment on this final plat. Please feel free to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Mr.
to
Tews.
excuse myself from this one since I own all the property around it. I own the property to the south.
So you like what
I'm,
they're
I'm,
doing?
I'm fine with what they got going on there.
Any other comments from the commission? Mr. Coley, do you have anything to say?
I believe Mr. Tews is declaring a conflict and asking to abstain from the matter.
I'll abstain. I'm fine with what they got going.
This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
Chairman, I'll move that we approve the final plat of the Oxy subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
wanted to cover some things very briefly because I know it's been a long meeting and we all want to go. First of all, you all received in your packets, there is going to be a commissioner training by the North Dakota Planning Association on September the 24th. And that's up at the Dunn County Courthouse in Manning, and there's no charge for that. So I would encourage members to attend that. Mr. Corton asked me to just bring a few issues before you. The accessory dwelling ordinance that you had recommended approval for went to first hearing in front of City Commission, and was there was recommendation and was approved for that. There was also a case of billboard issue that was brought in front of the Board of Adjustment recently, and a permit had been denied for a billboard, and they had appealed it to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment upheld the administrative determination of that. Having said that, staff will in the near future be bringing back to, I don't know if to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but to the City Commission, the sign ordinance that you had reviewed previously with some clarifications in it. Staff will also should be bringing forward, there had been discussion of a Villard residential overlay district, and that should be coming in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission in the near future. And that's it, if you have any questions for me, but those are just some updates that's just some updates that I wanted to bring to you.
Thank you, Mr. Josephs. And I just had one question in that. How is the lighting ordinance moving along?
Well, we are discussing that. I need to find out a little bit more about what happened with the lighting ordinance. I've had my discussions with Ed about that, so it's on a list. So, but I'd like to find out a little more about what happened with that, because I understand what it was. Was it revoked or just repealed? And
I don't know.
I think the situation you're referring to, Mr. Josephson, was enough years ago that we should think of it as starting from scratch. That's what my memory says.
I think so too.
I think it was probably, that was before the light bulb, I think.
Yeah, probably. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move. Second? Second? All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.